One last question for you. Do you regret resigning?
Yes, I do, sir. I certainly do regret resigning. I love this agency. I love the women and men of this agency, and I regret the day I left.
That was Steven Sund. He's the former chief of the Capitol Police, and he's now regretting his decision to step down amid the lack of preparedness that was demonstrated by the Capitol Police as the riots took place in the Capitol on January 6th. Now, Sund believes that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her request that he step down was misguided. And I want to give you those details for you right now. But while this story is a story in and of itself, keep in mind that this is a continuation of a trend that we're seeing with the Republican Party, this inability to apologize, this unwillingness to apologize, and then to essentially paint themselves as victims as the right-wing media launders their reputations. Now, Sund resigned pretty shortly after Nancy Pelosi requested that he do so on January 16th. And the former chief of the Capitol Police has an issue with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's demand for his resignation, saying that directive was misguided. Sund told a joint Senate panel investigating the January 6th riots that Pelosi demanded his resignation without a full understanding of what we prepared for. And so if you saw the countless videos that came out of that riot on January 6th, it's strange to use the phrase "what we were prepared for" because it appears that they were prepared for nothing. In fact, there were videos of Capitol Police taking selfies with some of these white supremacists, some of these rioters. And so that's part of the reason why there is this Senate investigation happening, the Senate hearing that took place just yesterday to kind of delve into what went wrong, who needs to take more of the blame. But John, just this like unwillingness to like take full responsibility for the Capitol Police's failure as well. I mean, as the chief, we now know that there were a bunch of people within his ranks that were in favor of what we saw in the Capitol.
Yeah, or at least to take full responsibility for the lack of preparation. Obviously, there's a lot of different types of responsibility to go around. His argument is an odd one. Like, if a coach just repeatedly got demolished and was like, yeah, but I was really prepared for a team that wasn't good. Like, okay, good, then go do some version of that. That has nothing to do. You failed in the one we actually had. The only thing that complicates it a little bit for me is he said that she didn't have a full understanding of what they did prepare for, but we still don't have a lot of understanding of so many different aspects of this. In terms of there's definitely the lack of preparation, but then once the day has begun, and potentially even before it, there's possible interference that we still don't know for sure about. Which is why, while I don't like the video clip that you just showed, and I definitely think that people died, so someone does have to be held responsible for that. It has always felt a little bit weird that like a couple of the Capitol Police people are the only people that apparently were responsible for this. When they were definitely, they were definitely part responsible for not being prepared. But like amidst everything about the 6th, is that the worst part? It's bad. I don't know that it's the worst part though. And we can't, I think part of why we want them to be held responsible is that I think whether we're saying it or not, we've sort of just accepted, well, we're never gonna be able to hold any of the Republicans who incited this thing responsible.
No, that's an excellent point. And I think that that's part of the reason why a lot of the focus has been on Capitol Police, and they do deserve some of the blame. And remember, the fish rots from the head down. I mean, he's the police chief, he's the chief, or former chief, I should say, of the Capitol Police. And for me, it was the combination of the lack of preparedness, in addition to the fact that so many of the Capitol Police officers were implicated in this riot for allowing it to happen, for engaging in it themselves by taking selfies with the rioters. Several of them have been suspended pending an investigation. And so that happened under his leadership. So he has to be willing to take responsibility for what he did wrong. But it's still unclear, let's be honest about this. It's still unclear why they were so ill prepared, right? Was it how much of that decision was based on leadership with the Capitol Police? How much of that decision had to do with the FBI? That's something that still really hasn't been sussed out in a detailed way to give me a little bit of clarity with this issue. But for him to say like, no, I regret it. Nancy Pelosi is misguided. Like, make no mistake, son. You certainly had leadership issues, and you should have stepped down. And I'm glad he did. But the point of this story is, had he not stepped down, and had he refused to apologize, there's an entire right-wing media infrastructure in place, ready to go to launder his reputation. And we see it with so many different cases, including what we just saw with Ted Cruz abandoning his own constituents to go on a beach vacation at the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun, right? So everyone, I think, is everyone is on the same page for the most part regarding how horrendous his behavior was. But again, there's that right-wing media infrastructure ready. Go ahead.
Yeah, just super fast. Like, Ron Johnson is sort of trying to do a version already of what you're saying, hypothetically, they would all be doing if he hadn't resigned. But like all of them are basic, like you gotta remember that the same people involved in this questioning are the ones who think, or at least say, that it was Antifa. So why isn't Ron Johnson more mad that this guy didn't stop Antifa from ransacking the Capitol? And if not Ron Johnson, plenty of other people who still push that idea to this day, and I'm tiring myself out even engaging hypothetically in this.
But you're right.
Web of seemingly contradictory conspiracy theories.
It's more than just a right-wing media infrastructure. As we talked about Ron Johnson yesterday and the fact that he was repeating conspiracy theories regarding Antifa during this hearing, the conspiracy theorists are in Congress and they're also engaging in an effort to basically do revisionist history and whitewash what actually happened that day. And it's awful that these are also the same people who had an equal vote to good faith senators who wanted to hold Trump accountable through the Senate impeachment hearing. These are people who aided and abetted Donald Trump's behavior, and then they got to vote on whether or not he should be convicted of the Senate impeachment charge. I'm sorry, the impeachment charge inciting an insurrection. Now, I want to compare, or I want to provide an example of what I'm talking about regarding this right-wing media infrastructure, right? Because again, everyone's on the same page regarding Ted Cruz and how what he did was wrong. In fact, he even admitted that what he did was wrong. I'm using his own words. But now the media has immediately pivoted to making him out to be the real victim here. And so a good example is what went down on Hannity's show just last night. Let's take a look.
You dropped off your daughters in Mexico. You came home in a day, probably less than a day. And here you have this scandal with Governor Cuomo, barely mentioned on these so-called other news networks. You're like 24/7 because you dropped somebody off and you came back home. I still think you can be a father and senator at the same time. And then you look at the scandal in New York and the cover-up. Where's the proportionality from the mob and the media? We got less than a minute.
Well, you're right, and I think the media is suffering from Trump withdrawal.
Yeah, because Trump was the victim over the last 4 years, and now the media needs to find someone else to victimize. And so it's the media that forced Ted Cruz to be a callous person by abandoning his constituents during a winter storm where people are dealing with rolling blackouts due to the privatization that Ted Cruz is in favor of, right? Ted Cruz, poor Ted Cruz and his incredibly wealthy family. They're the ones that are the real victims here. No, but this is what the media on the right does. They just completely launder the reputations of the most loathsome people on the planet, including Ted Cruz. It's just awful.
Yeah, and it would be, look, why am I saying if? I was gonna say, hypothetically, if some other government official that was a Democrat did something really tone deaf during a national emergency, then they would make a big deal out of it. Well, that's not a hypothetical, they did, and we've criticized a lot of those same instances. The people who went down to, I forget the island off the coast of Texas, but that You had Gavin Newsom's incidents, you had Nancy Pelosi, like we've already talked about those things. So, but then also, we already know he lied about it. It has been quadruple confirmed that he lied. Every piece of evidence that could possibly indicate that he lied shows that he lied. And even then, they don't even have to pretend to care about it. They can still act like, oh, he's just being a dad, He was just being a dad, dropping them off and bringing his roommate for some reason for the drop off. I mean, who wouldn't fly international to accompany their friend who's dropping his kids off? I mean, and then the changed flight time. It's just, and again, I know that this is something we say a lot of things over and over, and this is probably the thing we say the most over and over. But like, if this doesn't count for anything, then nothing counts for anything. And clearly nothing counts for anything. I'm not saying this is substantively the worst thing that anyone has done. It's not even the worst thing that Ted Cruz has done. It's not even the worst thing Ted Cruz has done this year, considering the events of January 6th. But it is such an obvious lie. It is an opportunistic lie to cover up for something obviously abhorrent. That Sean Hannity would not accept any other politician doing that. But he likes him, so doesn't matter, doesn't count for anything.
Yeah.
It's really just about the media, the so-called other news networks. It's really about them.
Yeah, so let's fight hard to repair the reputation of this loathsome individual. By the way, the rest of his statement from that video was this: the media is suffering from Trump withdrawal, where they've attacked Trump every day for 4 years. They don't know what to do, so they obsess over my taking my girls to the beach. Yeah. Not, by the way, Ted Cruz himself, with his own disgusting mouth, said that what he did was wrong. But then he remembered, oh, that's right, we're Republicans. That's right, we're on the right wing. That means that we should never apologize. We should never take responsibility for our actions. And we should always rest easy knowing that we have the Sean Hannitys of the world who are gonna help repair our reputations, even as we screwed over our own constituents, right? Because this segment, real quick, John, this segment, understand what they're communicating to people. The victims in this story aren't all of those Texans who were left without power during a brutal storm. The victims of this story are not the individuals who died because of how cold it was, okay? The victims of this story is not the 3 children who died because it was so cold that they started a fire in their fireplace, which then led to an actual fire in their home and killed them. They're not the real victims. Poor Ted Cruz. Poor Ted Cruz is the victim of left-wing media, right? That's what they're telling you, Texans. That's what you guys are voting for. People who are so callous that in their privileged position, they think they're the victims while they give you the middle finger as your family members and your children die. That's what this is. Yeah, and the only other thing I want to add is, you're right. He's a Republican, which is why he can roll this back. But notably, in the first day or two, he seemed a little bit worried. I mean, he did kind of apologize. Like, that's ancient history, it doesn't count anymore. But he did kind of apologize, which tells me he thought, maybe this is one that could hurt me. Maybe this is too much to go away to Cancun during this. And then a couple days passed, a week passed, and he came to the conclusion, based on his behavior now, no, I'm good. No, I'm okay. Doesn't matter enough. Sure, some people in Texas might not like it, but they don't mind it enough for it to really hurt my chances of re-election or my, power within Texas or whatever. It's not hurting my reputation enough. And thus, it goes back to, well, like we obviously were right to criticize Cruz, we're right to criticize the Fox News and right-wing media component of this, but it's on us to have expectations for our politicians, and when they prove themselves to be Ted Cruzian type figures, to have that matter. So long as they can do that and still get elected, then they're gonna do whatever they want. They're gonna fly to whatever tropical vacation they want. And right now, they can get away with it. And part of the reason they can get away with it is because a lot of good people, including in Texas, will be distracted by, yeah, the media, they do have Trump withdrawal. Yeah, it's about those libs. It's something else that absolves Ted Cruz for what he did. And not just the trip, but not caring at all about Texas's welfare during the pandemic, doing no fighting whatsoever to get them aid. Like, they don't have expectations
and they get distracted by BS, which is why I know sometimes people get frustrated with us for focusing so much on this stuff and trying to have there be consequences. It's because we need to have that be a mechanism that actually works in America. And it is incredibly personally and politically frustrating when it's proven, even in the most insane circumstances like the Ted Cruz Cancun thing, that it doesn't work. And that fundamentally you can get away with pretty much anything in America.
It's beyond frustrating. And if you're looking for a show that only harps on moderate Democrats and allows Republicans to get away with literal murder, you're not watching the right show. Sorry, we're gonna hold them both accountable. Because the actions by the right-wing media and these Trump loyalists has completely destroyed any possibility of having even like policy negotiations based on facts. Like we live in this post-fact world, and ignoring it is only emboldening it. And it's just, I'm sick of it. I'm really sick of it.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.